Whew, buddy. All right, so I have not had this conversation with a whole lot of people. Generally, when I bring up this topic I'm going to talk about, people either shut up and just listen to me, or they just dismiss me outright, or sometimes they just walk away. I have yet to have a really, really good, debate about this. The debates almost always devolve down into, nuh-uh. My topic today, and it's going to be, I guess the broad topic is going to be conspiracy. And I don't think I've done conspiracy as a broad topic yet, but I'm going to focus on two sub-conspiracies within my larger conspiracy topic. And those sub-conspiracies are going to be, one's a classic, and one's a new one that I don't think many people have talked about, at least not the way I talk about it. But they are tied together. The classic is the moon landing. Yes, the American landing of human beings on the moon. Yeah, we'll talk about that one first. And then my second conspiracy topic, subtopic, is nuclear weapons and nuclear whatever, energy, power, all together. We'll touch on all that. So I'll try to squeeze this all into one video. This might wind up being a two-parter. Let's see how long I ramble on about the moon landing before I get to the nuclear stuff. So, the moon landing. When it happened in 1969. I don't have any notes here. I didn't do any research. I literally was just like, oh, moon landing. I could run my mouth about that forever. Let me go ahead and make a video and go ahead and put my ideas down there, because I have a lot of ideas on the topic. I remember when I was in high school, people were talking about the technology involved in the moon landing, and even at that time, they were talking about how the computer power, and I don't know if they're talking about strictly the amount of RAM or the amount of bits or data, whatever the hell it was, but they basically said that they landed the moon with the kind of technology that was on an original Nintendo NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. That would be the classic 8-bit, the one where you had to put the cartridges in and pop them down and then blow on them, and then they never worked. Yeah, that one. I was told that had more power than the computers that ran the original moon landing. That's probably not true. It might have been that little compact thing took up an entire room, but they had rooms and rooms and rooms of computers and data and whatever. I'm going to guess it's probably some kind of weak comparison, because, it just obviously different applications. And just we'll get this out of the way to begin with. First of all, conspiracy itself is a dirty word. People use it to dismiss ideas all the time, and I don't like it, because conspiracy is literally, the word itself means to breathe together, I think. Yeah, I have friends that are into entomology and the meanings of words and stuff, and I've had this discussion before, and conspiracy means to breathe together. And it basically means that if two people devise a plan in secret to do something without telling other people, then it's a conspiracy. So, pretty much all plans are conspiracy. You conspire to have plans. That doesn't mean that it has to be illegal or nefarious. It could be literally anything. If you're keeping the plans to yourself, it's a conspiracy. If you're breathing together with someone else and sharing that breath, that idea, those words. So everything's a conspiracy. Every business deal is a conspiracy. Every government idea that hasn't been written down yet, that hasn't been made into law, is a conspiracy. So yes, conspiracies are fucking everywhere all the time. Almost everything is a conspiracy. Even just a plan to go to the grocery store is a conspiracy. You know what I mean? So it being a dirty word is just stupid. And the way it's applied to big ideas is really stupid. Anyway, I digress. The moon landing, I'll just say right now, and I can already tell this is probably going to be a two-parter. let me just go ahead and just talk about the moon landing then. I definitely don't think it happened the way that they say it happened. And I'll tell you why. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So I was talking to someone about this before, and he's one of these guys that thinks he's some kind of like, working against the system guy, but he works totally inside the system. He's totally owned by the system. And he tries to act like he's a hacker of the system, but he's just on a level of the pyramid where he doesn't even see the level above him. You know what I mean? So when I told him that my theory, which we'll talk about here in a minute, his response was that that's impossible. Impossible. Well, impossible? I don't know if impossible exists. It's just so absolute. Like almost anything is possible. Now, is it probable? Nah. Probability and possibility are very, 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 very different things. I posited to a friend one time, I was holding a wine glass, and I said, you talk about absolute stuff. This is possible. This is impossible. I said, I can drop this wine glass on the ground, and yes, it's very, very, very likely that it will shatter into a bunch of pieces and fly across the room. But it is possible. It is possible that it'll bounce back into my hands, unbroken. That possibility is very tiny, but it exists. To act like it doesn't exist is foolish. Because, what is it? Is it 1 out of 5,000 or 1 out of 50,000 coin flips will land on its edge? Not on a face, not on heads or tails, but on the edge of the coin itself. I think it depends on the coin. Maybe that's a nickel or something. I don't know. You can look that up. Prove me wrong. If I'm totally full of shit about that, put it in the comments and tell me what an idiot I am. Anyway, I don't think we've ever put humans on the moon. That's not to say we haven't been to the moon. You see, people now see the world in a certain way, and the people of today that are used to having media and internet and video all the time, we have a different perspective of the world than the way it was back in the 1960s. And we definitely have a different perspective considering the way the Cold War was. There was a coup when Kennedy was assassinated. There was a coup d'etat in America where the sitting president was murdered and he was replaced by a guy who was probably involved in the murder, LBJ. And that's my opinion. That's a whole other video. We'll go through that again. But most people don't even know that there was a coup d'etat right here in our country. Most people don't know that led directly into our involvement in Vietnam, that it was tied in with Cuba and Russian stuff, and it led to the re-enslavement of black folks. Yeah, another topic we can talk about. Definitely not an overt enslavement, but more of an enslavement of the mind. And, the way the Democrats treat black folks like they're on a plantation, even still. That was all stuff that we were trying to get away from in the 60s. And the coup, when it happened, helped push us more towards it. And anyway, the 1960s is a very interesting time. I actually have a fictional story that I want to write, and it is tied together with both of these conspiracy theories, and I'll share it with you guys one of these days when I'm ready. But I've jumped on enough tangents here. I should go back to where I started. So it was really important at the time for us to present strength to the world. And they had decided that the best way to present strength and to quell the thoughts of the coup that had happened, to take some of Kennedy's ideas and run with them. And, Kennedy had talked about us being on the moon. And this became like a great dream for a lot of people. It pushed scientific ideas forward. And it was something that we could use to combat Russia and communism and all these other things. But I think it's a giant fraud. Not a fraud in the way that a lot of people say. I do think that we sent probes to the moon. I mean, obviously, we've had technology to send probes to Mars, even back into the 70s. And we've sent probes out into deep into our own solar system in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. So the technology to send a probe to the moon and grab some moon rocks and bring it back and maybe even film some of the surface of the moon, I mean, that existed back then. However, the technology to send a human being all the way to the moon, and this is important, and have them come back intact and alive and healthy, no. See, one thing people don't talk about with the moon, and I'm pretty sure that we knew this even before we got there, just based on theory. The moon doesn't have an atmosphere the way that the Earth does. I mean, there's a really, 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 really thin atmosphere there. And it does have gravity. And in my opinion, the moon is made up of the same things the Earth is made of. I'm pretty sure something collided with a Earth, an older prehistoric. I mean, we're talking like billions of years ago Earth. I'm pretty sure a space object collided with an ancient Earth and split Earth into what we currently know as the Earth and the moon. You know, you can still see this in the way that the Earth wobbles. You know, we have a really weird rotation and a really weird wobble that it appears to be an echo of an impact that happened, you know, a long time ago, but a long time ago in our perception, but in the grand scheme of everything in the whole universe, not even that long ago, and soon enough in the past that we're still echoing from it. So the moon is made up of the same stuff the Earth is made of, which means anything you can mine on the Earth, you could probably mine on the moon. Anyway, there's probably also other stuff on the moon. But one important aspect of the moon is there's no erosion. There's no wind. There's no water. You know, if you kick up a cloud of dust on the surface of the moon, it'll float around for months, years, decades. It doesn't settle. Like, you know, you kick up a cloud of dust on Earth, it builds up and it settles because the gravity pulls it down and the air weighs it down. And these things collide with each other. Well, if you were to look at the particles of the moon under a microscope, they'd all look like these little spiky things with just, you know, crystalline structures just jutting out everywhere. Because without erosion, you know, erosion takes all those little spikes and, you know, nubs them down. I mean, think about pebbles in a creek, how they're all smooth because, you know, thousands, millions of years of those pebbles rubbing up against each other have smoothed them out. Well, when you don't have that, and you don't have that on the moon, all the particles are incredibly sharp and crystalline. So what would have happened if we as humans in this spacecraft would have landed on the surface of the moon? We would have kicked up a cloud of dust that we would still be able to see today. And not only that, as soon as the human beings in these spacesuits got out of the craft, these little particles would have gotten into every little crevice on us. You know, the rubber that actually holds the parts of the suits together where they bend. You know, everywhere we have a bend, you know, think of your body like a G.I. Joe. You know, everywhere your arm here and your wrist there, and you know, you see how all of the suits have all this articulation. You know, where, you know, the head is mostly fixed, but the arms can move and stuff. Everywhere that it would connect would be some kind of rubber or whatever material they were using, whatever space age material. I'm sure it was some form of rubber, mylar, whatever. Anyway, that material would have been immediately engulfed with these all this dust, all this moon dust. And it would have, whatever, it would have compromised these suits. And it would have killed the people inside them. Because the vacuum of space, for us to fight off the vacuum of space, these suits would have had to have been monstrous. And the idea of not only combating this vacuum, but also combating the dust on the moon, it's impossible. And, one thing that I've always wondered about, and, we'll wrap this up for today. We'll talk about my other idea with nuclear power later, nuclear weapons mostly. How the fuck did we get back? So we send this giant rocket, multi-stage rocket, we shoot it into space, and all that's left after this giant rocket burns out all its fuel is this tiny little craft. This tiny little craft goes to the moon and circles around the moon, and then it lands. And I guess they ejected part of it, and then another part of it stayed in orbit. And this little tiny thing, like let's say, I don't know what the volume of the original craft, the original full rocket, let's say 5%. It might be more like 2%, or I don't know. I'd have to look at the actual numbers, but a small portion of that gigantic craft goes and lands on the surface of the moon. So it's got these two guys inside, right? Maybe there were three. I think the third one was actually in the craft. You can see how well researched I am in my debate here. Anyhow, but I don't really need to be, because these concepts are so fucking simple. Moon dust. Nintendo Entertainment System for technology. The math involved in landing on the surface of the moon and not crashing or exploding and being able to come back astronomically. I mean, it's not the kind of thing that humans can do. And definitely can't do the first time. See, that's the thing. The moon landing was televised. Now, I went to film school in the late 90s, and I understand a lot of that technology. How the fuck did we broadcast a live transmission of video from the moon back to Earth in the summer of 1969? That technology didn't exist back then. Hell, that technology barely exists now. A live video transmission from the moon to the Earth? Are you fucking kidding me? While they're communicating over radio? It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure someone out there could, chime in here and provide all kinds of proof and whatever. And go ahead, please do. I want to start a conversation here on this topic. But it's always puzzled me. So let's assume these humans have overcome all of these obstacles and are somehow managing to broadcast their landing on the surface of the moon. Let's just assume that happens. Where was their fuel to come back? I mean, the moon, it has less gravity than the Earth. Yes, absolutely. A lot less gravity. I think they said it's something like 1/6. Well, they didn't have 1/6 of the fuel from that gigantic rocket in that tiny little landing module. I actually built a model of this thing when I was a little kid, and I remember wondering, I wasn't cussing at that age, but I was like, how in the heck did they get this little thing back to Earth? How? There's room for a couple of people, then you got a TV station in there, and you got all these computers in there, radio equipment, all this stuff. Where's the fuel? Where are the rockets to leave the gravitational pull of the moon to get back to the orbiting thing? And then how does the orbiting thing get back to Earth? Yeah, they say that they slingshot it back. Well, you got to be able to start the slingshot, right? How? I've never gotten a good explanation. And I won't say I've dug and dug and dug and dug, but that's mostly because I get to a certain point of these ideas and I'm just like, it's bullshit. We're being lied to. God damn it. There's a conspiracy on. So, whatever. I mean, maybe I'm an idiot. I was actually told that during the first briefing, when they were taught when after the moon landing, that they let the press into whatever to ask questions and stuff, and that someone had actually handed out little pamphlets at that very first press meeting that said that the moon landing was a hoax. And I've heard some people talk about how that hoax was a hoax, and it was all just designed to kind of poison the well, so that the questions people were asking were the wrong questions. My question is, how the fuck did we get back? How the fuck did we land to begin with? How the fuck did we broadcast what we were doing? How the fuck did we get back? I don't think any of those things are possible. Now, like I said, I think we've been to the moon. I think we've sent machines there. I think we've had probes. I think we've collected tons of samples. I think we know what it's like there. I think the fact that we haven't sent tons and tons of people there tell us that it's pretty fucking barren and there's no money to be made there, and that like we went ahead and kicked communism's ass and that was really all we ever needed to do. So, you know, whatever. Oh, and as an aside, the military-industrial complex in the 1970s, I think. It might have even been late 60s, I'm not sure. They wanted to blow up a large chunk of the moon with nuclear weapons in order to show Russia how powerful we were. And from what I heard, they tried to get Carl Sagan to help them out. And good old Carl Sagan was like, "What? Are you fucking nuts? Do you understand what will happen if we blow up part of the moon or any of the moon? You can't do that. You'll send it off. You'll change its orbit. It'll crash land into Earth, or it'll fly off into space. Do you have any idea how many of the things that happen on Earth are dependent on the moon? Every female that ovulates, every tide of every ocean, lighting, how evolution. So thank you, Carl Sagan. I would like to reach through time and space. And first of all, I love Cosmos. I still love Cosmos. I love your voice. I love the way you think. And you're still an inspiration to me years later. Hail Sagan. Thank you for saving us from our government and these so-called nuclear weapons, which we'll talk about in part 2 of my conspiracy theory special. Thanks for joining me, y'all. I love you, and I mean it. Until next time.